Hey guys, so today I'll be discussing some of the concepts regarding React. I have prepared some questions that, for example, these are the kind of questions I'll be discussing. So my first question is like, what is React? So what happens is previously by the help of HTML, CSS, and normal JavaScript. So what we used to do is we used to uh, deal with DOM, right? So we used to write hundreds and thousands of lines of code. It actually makes our code really tougher to debug. So if there is, and the main issue is with the DOM is that whenever a state changes, for example, I am clicking a button, or for example, I am deleting something, then what happens is like my entire DOM gets re-rendered again because I have to call the display function again and again. So after every re-render, I have to again call the whole function again and again. So what it does is it actually slows down our app, and moreover, it actually creates really tougher issues for us. So what happens is in React, it is a single page application, and what React has to offer is it is like a UI library. So what we call React is just a UI library. It just makes our code simpler, our things for example, if I wanted to create a button or any functionality, so what happens is it just re-renders that component itself. So what are components? So what components are is just like atoms. So you might have heard in during your college days that everything is an atom, right? Everything is made up of small atoms. So atoms basically makes matters and all. So that's how the things work, right? So just like that, in the React as well, we have small components. So for example, let us see an example. For example, this is the React official documentation page. So what happens is, now, for example, this is a search button, this is a navbar, right? So we can structure this navbar completely into one component. One component is just like a folder. For example, this is a just like a component. So this is not just a testing thing. So you can have, so these are just like a component. So I can make like a component folder, and then I can make this as a component, and then this thing. For example, I don't. So what we used to do is in the declarative, for example, in the this is basically a heading, there's a text and there's a text, right? So previously what we used to do, we used to copy paste the things, isn't it? So for example, if we're making this box, then we have to again copy paste this whole code and then write the component based thing, and this text again and again, isn't it? So what React has to offer is just make one component and let the React make React. I mean, it is just a just create a structure that, yeah, here I need a heading, here there should be a text, and here there should be a text. Okay, just make this skeleton and just pass the props. So what are props then? Props are basically properties. It is just like a function. I will explain it by the help of examples as well. So we just have to pass the props, and it will just return a div. For example, if it's a div container, then in the container, it will be heading. In the place of heading, it will just pass the component based. And again, if I call this box again and just pass the props as learn once, next, learn once, write anywhere, then it will just act like as it's a component. Okay. So so let's get back to our thing. So what is React? React is just nothing but just a UI library. Just a, okay, let me comment on this. It's just a UI library. So it is basically, we can say it is a single page application, because in the previous HTML CSS, what we used to do, we used to create many HTML pages, right? So here, as you can see, there is only one HTML page with a div root. And what we used to do is just call that root and just render my application. Then just render that thing as well only. So what app is? So I'm just importing the app here. And what app is? It is just a function that returns whatever it is. So for example, that I have discussed above, that this navbar, for example, this is just a component kind of sliding thing, and then there's a heading and there's a 10. These are text. So what I will do is just import the navbar here, for example, like this, and yeah, you are just good to go. Yeah. So this is just like a basic thing that is in React. So yeah, okay. So where's my data? Yeah. So this is a UI library and there's a single page application because it is single page app because there's only one index.html. Yeah, you can use roots and all. I will cover that later. And roots, by roots, so what I mean is just with one index.html, you can make many components as well. And you can redirect your user from one page to another. So it's not like you have just one index.html and you will be just you will be just having one index.html. So it's not like that. So you can also make many pages as well. It's not like that. But index that there but there will be only one index.html. So yeah. So what it is that you can create elements as well. So I will go through that elements as well. So what elements are these are basically React elements. So for example, if I say, for example, function, first of all, I have to export default, export default function, example, example. What it will return is just this is just a React fragment. So what React fragment is just you can say it's like a div kind of div, but the thing is, for example, it won't be there in the UI. So if you inspect, for example, then it won't be shown as a div. So for example, if you don't want div, there will be multiple elements. If there are, for example, there is an h1 and then there is a maybe p tag. Then, for example, if there are multiple elements, these are basically known as React elements. Okay. So you can, as you know that you can't write the HTML inside the JavaScript. So what it is, I will go through it in the JS as well. So no need to issue. So for example, if it is if there are multiple elements, then you have to wrap around inside a React fragment. It is also known as React fragment. React dot fragment, I think. Yeah, fragment. So there as well, it will be React dot fragment. And I think I have to import that as well. Is it is it imported? Yeah, it is important. So this is just a React fragment. So if there are multiple elements, then you have to use a React fragment or a div, anything you want. So this is just a single. So what it returns is it returns the elements, React elements. So then coming into JSX. So what JSX stands for? It stands for JavaScript XML. So what it does is it is actually kind of HTML only. It is not exactly HTML. So what React has to say is that you can't write the HTML inside the JavaScript. So what we have to offer is just use JSX. So JSX are basically HTML elements only. But the thing is you can just so it is just a simple like a syntax and we we have the Babel which basically converts the HTML and everything into a language that React can understand. So what is Babel? Babel is just a tool, you can say. And in the React app, we have already the Babel inside it. But if you are not using a React app, then you have to install Babel, I mean, separately. So it allows so JSX actually produces React elements. So it is basically returns every element. So this is a component. This function, every function is known as a component, a separate component, and every component returns a React element. Okay. So this is basically JSX, and uh, and inside the JSX you can also write valid JavaScript. So inside entire inside the JSX, if you are writing for example, I have declared a const data equal to something, for example, maybe, for example, yeah, example data. Okay, so it is basically a variable, isn't it? So if you want to write inside a JSX, then you have to wrap around inside a data. So but the thing is, if you are just writing data like this, it won't be there. I mean, it won't catch the data here. So if there is, okay, there is no, okay, let me first of all, import this here. Okay, okay, no, what is the, okay, this example. Yeah, example. Yeah. So if you are writing, yeah. So as you can see, it is just returning data. Why it is coming twice? It is just because of the restrict mode. Yeah. If I remove the restrict mode here, then I think it will come. Okay, why it is coming? So as you can see, the data, this thing is just my first data, and the second data is this thing data. Okay. So for example, if I am changing this, then it would be this data. Okay. So for example, if you want to write anything inside the JSX, you have to wrap around inside a curly braces. So for example, if you want to write any CSS, any JavaScript like map, any function, anything you want to write inside JSX, then you have to wrap around that inside a curly braces. So this is all about the JSX. And next question is like props. So what are props is basically just the properties. So what happens is I have give I gave you an example, like for example, you just have to write a div and then pass the props inside it, isn't it? So let me just go with that. Yeah, this one. For example, there's, okay, I think, yeah. So for example, I am writing export function ex1 return. So for example, I want h1. So for example, this one is h1. Okay. So I want inside h1, I want something. This is just an h1. And what I will do is, yeah, I think import that. Yeah, we can import that here. Let me remove these things. I don't need these things. So I will just simply write, what was the name there? EX1. EX. Yeah. I have to just import this, and then I just have to pass the props. So for example, my name that I have given as title. I can write here as well. Okay. And there it is just EX1. and I have the D structure. And then here it's giving me what is giving me shoes. So I have to, for example, the issue, I think there was an issue and I have not closed the exam, that's why. So yeah. So for example, what I have done is, so I just remove it. Okay. So what happened is, so I've just created a exam kind of thing. This is just a component. What it takes, it is just a props. So from props, let me first of all console. For example, if I am doing props and then consoling that thing log props. So you will see. So yeah, you will see that the props is basically just an object, isn't it? So if you are getting an object, you have to destructure it, isn't it? So for example, I am giving tags, for example, title equal to, I have to destructure it. Yeah, title from props. So you can see that my title, I have just restructured it from my props object. So whatever you send from the props in the form of props, it will be always an object. So you can, in case of, for example, you can also send an object a function as well. So for example, if you're writing some function here, maybe ABCD function, something function, so you can also pass that in the form of props into your child component as well, and just get the data from them. So for example, if you are writing the function, then it will just, you will get the function here and just invoke the function in the line number 2 also. So wherever you need in the child components. So the next part, so props are basically the properties, you will see. Properties, wait, properties that flows from component to component. Component. Pardon me for if I'm mistaken. Yeah, component to component in form of data. You can say it's just like a data. So we can relate this like this, isn't it? So for example, if I'm making a div in the parent component, for example, so if I'm making a div and I'm just making a div, yeah, in the form of child, and I'm just creating a h1 tag, or maybe some UI, maybe some other libraries as well. So if I'm writing h1 a p and a p, and for example, I need to pass from the parent just the props that, yeah, in case of the h1, in case of for example the heading, you need to have the declarative, and what you need to do is just copy this thing and just 3 times, that's it. So what it will do, for example, if it's a div, then in the case of heading, for example, in case of title, you will be just giving a heading kind of thing, and the second para and the third para. So in the second para, you will be giving this thing, this whole para, and just pass the flow and pass the prop. And what the child component will do, it will just return you a div in the form of that. Yeah, this is what you have gave me the data, and this is what you need. So I'm just giving you. So React just making these things simple. So you have just this thing you have to just reload, and everything will be found. So for example, what I have done, I have not written any h1 tag here, isn't it? I've just parsed the props. I've just created one component that will just that will just return me the whatever I pass from the parent, isn't it? So yeah, this was all for the props. So what are state? Okay, state is basically what state generally means. I mean, if you have a cold water or maybe a hot water, So for example, if you are taking a fridge water, okay, so you have came from the outside and you are just tired. So you have just taken out a glass of cold water. So in the current state, your glass of water is really cold, isn't it? But after maybe 10 to 15 minutes, it won't be, isn't it? So what it does is it is just changing its state, isn't it? So in React, what React has to offer, that there are hooks, many hooks in the React to manage the state. So in this state, what state is? It is just an information that it is just a built-in React object that is that contains the data or the information about the component. So what state is? So basically, if I so the state may be anything. State might be anything, but a common hook that I can explain you that will help you understanding the state is use state. So what I will do is const const maybe state state. I'll just import use state and 0. Okay. So yeah. So what it is telling is that use state is basically just a hook. So what are hooks? It will, I think I will explain it in the later videos. So what hooks need to say that this is your current state. So for example, if I am maybe using a counter example or something, then what it needs to say that your current value is just state, just 0. And this is my state. And this is the updater function that it returns. These are basically two things that my use state hook will return: the state and the updated state, update state function. So what it will take the state. It basically remembers the state, the previous state, and just returns you the updated state. But the thing is, the twist is, it won't update your whole DOM. It will just update that component that needs to be re-rendered. I mean, for example, if you want a single component to be updated, then you will just update that single component itself. Then explain. So yeah, this was state, and explain the state gets updated. Yeah, state gets updated with the help of hooks. So if I go to the official documentation of hooks, hooks, no, this, I think, yeah, docs, and in the hooks you can see introduction to hooks. So you can read this. These are just basically functions. So previously, what they were used to, I mean, there were class-based components. So there were no hooks. So state management was really tough at that point. So this was the example I was talking about. So for example, there is a simple count, and in the button in the on click, you have to just update the count value. Then, as I have said in the JSX, that everything that is JS, that is valid JavaScript, it should be wrapped around inside a object bracket. So there's a callback function, isn't it? This is just a normal function. So this should be wrapped around a object bracket. So this is just you can go through the hooks documentation. I think that will definitely make things easier. So this is so state basically gets updated with the hooks. Hooks might be anything. Hooks might be use state. Hooks might be, there are many types of hooks that has different use cases inside them. Then the next part is the components. So I have been talking about the components a lot till this video. So what components are? These are just the individual functions. So my example one, this is a component. This is a component, right? So it completely depends upon you what you want the component to be. I mean, for example, my example should be the heading component, isn't it? It should be the parent component. So it should be written inside the app. So you just want your example component to re-render, isn't it? So this is just a parent. and everything. This exam, it is just a child, isn't it? So this exam is just a component. This example is just a component. So these are just component. These are just functions. That's it. So how can you handle the events in React? So events can be handled by using hooks, by using functions, hooks. I mean, yeah. So in the hooks, by using hooks, you can basically handle the events. You can also handle the events by, for example, on change, on click, or everything, anything you want. It was just like previous thing only, but yeah. So I think this was all. This was all. I have to. These are just the common problems. I mean, common questions that everyone tends to ask during anything. I mean, if you are working with the React. So yeah, this was all. This was all, and thanks for sticking. If you are still seeing this video, then make sure you hit the like and share and subscribe. So yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot.